This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Stay tuned if you want to see the secret website they let me build for my goose. I think we can all agree that the new Spider-Man No Way Home movie is by far one of the greatest and most appreciated superhero films of all time. Now, all credit where it's due, the OG Batmans and the classic Iron Man will always stand true to the test of time because that is the film that laid down the groundwork for this entire universe of films we now have. But what No Way Home did, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, no, like for real, stop watching or you're going to get spoiled. But what this movie did, bringing all three Spider-Mans together, is something that I still can't believe they actually did. I've gone back to see the movie multiple times now, comment how many times you've seen it, and each time I see it and they all come on screen together, I can't help but question it. Like, what am I watching? Is this even real? If you guys like the video and enjoy the content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next upcoming video. There's so many people a part of this community that love all the same things that you love if you're watching this video, and I'll be doing videos each week on your favorite movies and TV shows that you're not going to want to miss out on. So make sure you sub with post notifications on and I'll keep making these videos. Now, the fact that this movie wasn't just a cash grab showing off old characters to rake in some big box office money and they actually integrated them and used them in the story for at least half the movie is so impressive to see because it was something actually done right for once. Not only did it bring all these iconic characters in from previous iterations of Spider-Man, it also continued their story and not just furthered the story of this film. They used this film to add on to their stories from the previous Spider-Man and didn't try to rewrite them in a bad light. At the end of the movie, after they fixed all the villains so they wouldn't die when they went back to their timelines, the heroes all got sent back to their own timelines, and it wasn't enough to just leave it at that. They literally had to rewrite the entire MCU with Doctor Strange's last spell. This third Spider-Man movie broke the curse of Spider-Man movies ending on the third one or not being able to have too many people in them. This one did both of those fantastically and was the perfect end to the three-movie story. It also sets them up to do the most comic book accurate Spider-Man we've ever seen. As most of you know, Peter Parker in the comics wasn't cool. He didn't have a fancy suit and he didn't start out being besties with Tony Stark and fighting with the Avengers. Nobody knew him. He made his own suit, and this soft reboot of Tom Holland's Spider-Man is setting them up to make more movies like we've never seen this Spider-Man before, and I am so excited for this. They also ripped his new suit right out of a comic book page. I think this might be one of the best parts of the movie, and also one of the most unexpected, because when we thought it would be all happy and everything works out okay, they completely yanked the rug out from under us at the last second as soon as we realized that Peter wasn't going to be telling MJ that he was Spider-Man. He could see the actual pain and danger that he caused her just by her knowing his identity. He couldn't come to terms with exposing two of the only people left in this world that he cared about the most to such danger again when all he had to do to save them was not tell them who he was. This decision to save the people around him as well as the entire universe took me completely by surprise. Marvel movies like to leave on a huge cliffhanger and I just couldn't figure out what this one was going to be. I figured maybe something like the Avengers where after they're all finished teaming up and fighting the bad guys they kind of just hung out and chilled in the shawarma shop. I was really hoping that they take the opportunity to do a pizza time moment where Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield are sitting down waiting for him and he just plops the pizza down and goes,
"Pizza time."
I would have lost it. I would have screamed so hard. I know there's some things they cut from the movie. I'm just curious if this was one of them. The fan service in this movie was incredible, but there's just a few things that I would have liked to see more of, and this was at the top of that list. But I thought it would end on a lighter note and then reveal some larger looming threat, kind of like a Sinister Six head nod, which I mean, we kind of got in the sense of Venom staying in the MCU finally. We've been wondering for a while now how Venom was going to make his official appearance in the MCU, and to have Venom get portaled here because the symbiote knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man in a different universe is just crazy. We get to hear a little bit of Venom talking about the hive mind's knowledge across the multiverse, and this would let us assume that in one of the universes at least, the Venom symbiote knows Spider-Man's identity and that's why he was portaled into the MCU. But also, this means that in one of the universes that one of the Venom symbiotes is also subscribed to Michael J, which puts him in the 8% of the viewers watching this video. Yeah, I don't know why, but only 8% of the people watching are subscribed. If you're enjoying the videos, feel free to go down and smash the subscribe button. It really helps me out as I'm trying to make more fun videos like these. It just makes you think who else portaled into this movie that we just didn't see. Who else was roaming the streets of New York that we just didn't see on screen? Was Mary Jane walking around in this movie and we just didn't see it? What about Harry Osborn from the Raimi Spider-Man and the Amazing Spider-Man? Didn't Gwen Stacy's dad know? And also, Gwen Stacy herself? Yeah, she died, but so did all of these villains. Was Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy walking around in the same city when all of this was going down? As Doctor Strange said, there's an infinite number of people across the multiverse who know Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and only extremely coincidentally did the very iconic villains make it through the tears in the multiverse before Strange shut it down. Maybe it's because those were the people looking for Peter Parker. Could you imagine if instead of them slipping through, it was a completely different cast of characters? We just get all the Mary Jane showing up at once and it's a big Spider-Man convention. What if all the Aunt Mays showed up and they were still alive? Or all the variations of Uncle Ben? If you remember, we were thinking about the possibility of a Sinister Six tease in this movie. Unfortunately, we never saw the light of the Amazing Spider-Man 3, but at the end of that, they teased the Sinister Six pretty hard before they showed us the Rhino. After the death of Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker puts away the Spider-Man suit, Harry Osborn was shipped off to prison only to be shortly visited by a Mr. Fierce, who was giving him an update on their villainous plans moving forward. Now that Spider-Man was out of the picture, they wanted to move forward with their plan to take over New York City with the help of a few other gifted individuals. And then in the credits, they show off schematics for the Green Goblin's glider, the Rhino's horn, Doc Ock's tentacles, the Vulture's wings, and even a little hint at Kraven the Hunter and what would be Mysterio. Personally, I think Andrew Garfield was robbed. The Amazing Spider-Man 3 would have went so hard. I almost wish that they would pick it back up now and carry on the story now that No Way Home has filled us in on what happened after all that time. The original Sinister Six consisted of Doc Ock, Vulture, Electro, Sandman, Mysterio, and Kraven the Hunter. The only person who we need to talk about who's not in the Sinister Six is a personal friend of mine, my pet Goose. I was actually thinking the other day about how I would know if he had spider powers and could shoot webs out of his butt. Recently, he's been up to other stuff though. Thanks to our friends at Squarespace reaching out to us, I went ahead and built my Goose his very own official website. Squarespace makes it so easy to make a website for whatever you need, whether it's for a hobby or a side hustle or for your personal business, or even if it's just for fun or for your pet Goose. Squarespace is the easiest place to do it. In no time at all, as soon as I see my Goose swinging around a lightsaber, boom, I can edit my website on mobile and post a picture of him with his brand new lightsaber. There's a lot of easy tools to use. We ended up adding a comment section so you can leave feedback for the Goose. He actually goes through everything and honks at all of your feedback since, he's just a goose. We've also got a nice gallery of fan art set up to display all the nice pictures people send him. Look at this comic strip Maria made. This is an accurate representation of our first time meeting. There's so many things you can do with Squarespace. We've even got a little area where you can go listen to his honk as you fall asleep at night. Ah, the soothing tones. The audio is just embedded right into the page itself. If you want to try it out for free, you can head over to squarespace.com for a free 14-day trial, and then when you're ready to launch your own website, you can go to squarespace.com/MichaelJ or use code MichaelJ at checkout and get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring the channel and giving the bestest Goose ever his very own official website. Now back to the video. If you remember, at the end credit scene of Spider-Man Homecoming, we can actually see Michael Keaton as the Vulture getting put into prison and meeting the Scorpion for the first time. And we also have our first Venom symbiote in the MCU. Maybe he'll find an Eddie Brock in this universe, or possibly even bond with Flash Thompson. Yep, that's right. In the comics, a Venom symbiote bonded with Flash as part of Project Rebirth 2.0. Flash actually served in the army overseas where he lost his legs after he saved his partner's life, but when the symbiote bonded with Flash, he was actually able to regrow his legs similar to Dr. Connors thanks to the symbiote, and it also gave him Spider-Man-like powers. With the symbiote, they sent him on missions overseas to recover high-value assets, which mixed him up with the wrong people who ended up kidnapping Betty Brant and almost blew her up before Spider-Man saved her. Later on, he gets mixed up in a whole slew of characters, including Red Hulk, Mephisto, Ghost Rider, a lot of which just haven't been introduced into the MCU yet, so I feel like it's more likely that we'll see a new story. This symbiote that Tom Hardy as Venom left behind will probably find an Eddie Brock in this universe versus going with Flash Thompson. But who knows, the MCU likes to throw a spin on things that already exist, so we don't really know what's coming and keep us guessing. But once this symbiote finds its Eddie Brock, we'll have a Venom, a Scorpion, a Vulture. All we need is a Goblin, maybe a Sandman, and a Doc Ock, and we'll have our Sinister Six. As much as I wanted them to tease Sinister Six, I think that doing that as well as reintroducing the two original Spider-Man would have just been too much for one movie, and they would have repeated history with the original Spider-Man 3, just included too many people, and to make sense of a story, it wouldn't have been nearly as good as it is now. I do appreciate the teases, and I can't wait to see what they do with it, but it looks like we'll have to wait a little bit longer. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Hawkeye, but spoilers for like 10 seconds. If you're not caught up yet, just don't look at the screen. They recently introduced Kingpin in an episode, just another massive Spider-Man villain making its way into the MCU, and Sony also released their trailer for the new Morbius movie, which looks absolutely insane. I don't think that it'll travel to the Marvel universe, but who knows? We might get to see him go head-to-head with Sony Spider-Man since they still have the rights to him and they literally just soft rebooted him. But Morbius looks really dark, and I'm very excited for this. It's a completely different tone and almost feels like old Resident Evil movie vibes. The weird thing is, the Vulture is in the MCU related to Spider-Man from Homecoming, but when Vulture appears in Morbius, he's going to be in the Sony universe, not in the MCU. So I'm just curious how that translates, how they're going to go about that and handle that. How are they going to explain which universe they're in or which version of the character it is? Because I'm pretty sure it doesn't go in between universes since Spider-Man is the only IP they share with Marvel, but I'm really curious to see. Sinister Six is a huge part of Spider-Man and his story, and I want to see someone do it finally. We've had it teased for so long. I wouldn't be mad if they rebooted Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and gave us another movie just to give us closure and see what's happened after all that time and what's different after they went back, because all of these little variations of things they changed before sending them back each created new timelines that branched off from the main timeline they came from, so they're each going back to different altered versions of their own universes. So much would be changed. I'm pretty sure this means Gwen Stacy is still alive. I want to see Tobey Maguire and his Mary Jane together in this life that they worked out for each other. They could use this as an opportunity to show us different Peter Parkers from the comics that we might not necessarily get to see otherwise. In the universe of Spider-Man life story, Peter and Mary Jane have two kids, Claire Parker and Benji Parker. Eventually, Claire goes on to grow up and become Spider-Woman and fight against Dr. Doom. Benji, on the other hand, actually sacrifices himself while his sister is fighting Morlun, basically the vampire who feeds on totems and has actually tried eating Spider-Man on multiple occasions. But Benji realizes that he's vulnerable while he's feeding and allows himself to get eaten, leaving him vulnerable for Claire to deliver the final blow. Fortunately, he survives, but is left crippled. I'm not saying they have to tell the story entirely, but there is Peter Parkers that exist that this could definitely turn into. I'm curious if Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker ever has kids with MJ. How do they make it work? They just would have to be so careful with how far they deviate from the original Peter Parker, as Tobey Maguire was the original Spider-Man to so many people for so long. They can't rewrite his timeline and try to say that he was not the original Spider-Man, Tom Holland is, or people will hate it. But that being said, I think there's a way where they can make a good sequel to Tobey Maguire's trilogy. I would really like to see a sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man as well, but it would be really hard to follow up with all the Sinister Six teases after Spider-Man 2. If they were to pick up, maybe they could skip the last 10-15 years and pick up with a new story similar to the one in the comics, House of M, where Peter Parker marries his first love, Gwen Stacy. They actually have a kid together as well, Richie, which they name after Peter's dad, Richard Parker. But upon learning that this reality, the House of M, is a lie, Peter can't fully process his grief for losing Gwen Stacy and Richie, similar to how Wanda had to go through the grief of losing Vision and her two children, which we still see her dealing with at the end of the post-credit scene when Doctor Strange goes to visit her. It looks like she's still been studying the Book of the Damned to bring her family back. I love the closure this film brought to all of these movies, but I think it would also be really cool to see their stories carry on, as they were both robbed of sequels before they had a chance to go back and make them. Go down to the comments and let me know what you think about this. I don't want them to go back and ruin it by trying to make money off of it, but if they had a good story, would you want to see a sequel to the two original trilogies? I would love to dive into this deeper, but thank you so much for watching. I'll be back soon with another video, and until then, I will see you in the comments. Peace.